You dare challenge me in my own hall?
I have no choice.
Then face the consequences.
The great throne hall of the Zuri Empire was silent. No wind moved the hanging crystal banners. No guard dared to breathe too loudly. At the center of the hall sat the Alien Queen. Her form was tall and elegant, her skin like dark silver stone. Her eyes glowed with ancient light, filled with control and command. She had ruled for many cycles, and under her rule the empire had grown strong. Above her throne was carved the oldest law of the empire. Love is weakness, and weakness must be destroyed. Every citizen knew this law. Every soldier was raised by it, especially when it came to humans. Humans were called emotional, unpredictable, dangerous. They loved too easily. They sacrificed too quickly. And that scared the Zari more than any weapon. That fear was the reason the queen herself had forbidden all bonds with humans. No friendship, no mercy, no love. The law was absolute, and the queen had never broken a law. Until today. Heavy doors opened at the far end of the hall. Metal scraped against stone. Guards marched in perfect rhythm. Between them walked a single human male. His hands were bound. His clothes were torn from earlier battles. There was dried blood on his face. Yet his back was straight, and his eyes were calm. Many in the hall expected fear. Some expected begging. Others hoped for screams. But the human did none of that. He lifted his head and looked at the queen. Not with challenge, not with hatred, but with quiet awareness. A low murmur moved through the court. No human had ever met the queen's gaze and lived. The queen felt something strange at that moment. Not anger, not interest. Something deeper and more dangerous. Memory stirred within her. A war long ago. A battlefield covered in fire and broken stars. A moment when a wounded human soldier had shielded her without knowing who she was. She had ordered that memory buried. She had built laws on top of it. She had convinced herself it meant nothing. Yet here stood another human. Alive, steady, unafraid. The lead guard spoke loudly. This human was captured during the border conflict. He refused to give information. He protected injured Zari soldiers instead of escaping. The court reacted with confusion. Protect them. Why would a human do that? The queen leaned forward slightly. Her voice was calm but carried through the hall. Human, why did you not flee? The human answered simply. They were hurt. Leaving them would have been wrong. Shock spread across the faces of the advisors. Wrong. Such a simple word, yet it struck like a blade. The queen studied him in silence. According to law, this human should be executed immediately. According to logic, mercy was a mistake. She raised her hand. The guards tensed. Everyone expected the final order. Instead, she said, take him to the inner holding chambers. The hall erupted in stunned whispers. Inner chambers were not for prisoners. They were for valuable assets, or protected guests. One advisor stepped forward carefully. My queen, this contradicts the law. The queen turned her gaze toward the council. Her eyes burned brighter. I wrote the law, she said, and I will decide its use. No one spoke after that. The human was led away. Still silent, still calm. As the doors closed, the queen sat back on her throne. Her heart felt heavy. Though she would never admit it, she told herself this was strategy. She told herself humans were still dangerous. She told herself the law remained unbroken. Yet deep within, a crack had formed. A question she had avoided for years had returned. What if love was not weakness? What if it was strength misunderstood? If you are enjoying this story and want to hear how this forbidden bond begins to change an entire empire, please consider subscribing to this channel so you do not miss the next part of the journey. Far away in the holding chambers, the human looked up at the unfamiliar stars above the ceiling, unaware that the most powerful being in the galaxy had just taken the first step toward breaking her own law. The inner holding chambers were nothing like a prison. Soft white light filled the wide circular room. Energy walls shimmered like calm water. High above, the ceiling showed moving stars from distant systems. The human stood alone at the center. His hands were no longer bound. No guard stood close to him. Only silent watchers hidden behind unseen walls. This was a test. Every being brought here was expected to kneel, not by force, but by fear. Most prisoners fell to the ground within moments. The presence of the queen could be felt even when she was not there. Her power pressed down like gravity. But the human did not kneel. He stood still, breathing slowly, looking around with calm eyes. From a shadowed balcony above, the alien queen watched him. She had not announced herself. She wanted to see truth without performance. Her advisors stood behind her, silent but tense. "This one is dangerous," one whispered. "His mind is undisciplined," another said. The queen said nothing. Her gaze stayed fixed on the human. Minutes passed. The human shifted his weight slightly. Then, without warning, he spoke. "Whoever is watching," he said, "you do not need to hide." A ripple of shock passed through the observers. No one had spoken to the unseen watchers before. The queen stepped forward into the light. Her presence filled the chamber instantly. The air seemed to bend around her form. Guards moved, ready to strike if needed. But the human did something unexpected. He did not kneel. He did not bow deeply. He simply placed one hand over his chest and lowered his head slightly. A gesture of respect, not submission. The queen stopped walking. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in focus. "Why do you not kneel?" she asked. Her voice was calm, yet carried weight enough to crush steel. The human lifted his head. "To kneel is to say I am nothing," he replied. "I am a prisoner, not nothing." A sharp inhale moved through the advisors. Such words would usually mean death. The queen circled him slowly. Her long steps made no sound. "You stand before the ruler of this empire," she said. "Others kneel without being asked." The human met her gaze again. "I respect power," he said, "but I kneel only to conscience." Silence fell like a blade. The queen stopped directly in front of him. For the first time in many cycles, someone stood this close without trembling. She searched his thoughts with trained instinct. She expected chaos, fear, hatred, but found something else: resolve, pain, and a quiet sense of duty. "You protected my soldiers," the queen said. "Why?" The human answered without pause. "They were alive." The simplicity of the answer struck her harder than any lie could have. "You knew they were your enemies," she pressed. "They were wounded," he replied. That mattered more. One advisor stepped forward, unable to stay silent. "My queen, this is manipulation." The queen raised a single finger. The advisor froze instantly. She returned her attention to the human. "What is your name?" she asked. "Eli," he said. "Eli Carter." Names held power among the Zari. To give one freely was a sign of trust or defiance. The queen turned away from him briefly. Her thoughts moved fast. This human did not fit any record. Not a spy. Not a fanatic. Not a coward. He was something far more dangerous. He reminded her of a past she had buried, of a moment when mercy had saved her life and cost her everything she cared for. She faced him again. "You will remain here," she said. "You will not be harmed, but you will be watched." Eli nodded once. "That is fair," he said. Again, no fear, no begging. As the queen turned to leave, Eli spoke softly. "Your soldiers will heal," he said. "I treated them the best I could." The queen paused. Without turning back, she replied, "They will live." For the first time, a faint relief crossed the human's face. As she exited the chamber, the advisors surrounded her. "This one will disrupt order," one warned. "He challenges tradition," another added. The queen walked on without slowing. "Order that fears kindness is already broken," she said quietly. Behind her calm words, something had changed. A human who did not kneel had planted doubt in the heart of an empire. And far above, unseen by both ruler and prisoner, the ancient law carved into the palace walls seemed to tremble, as if the stars themselves were waiting to see what would break first. The days that followed passed quietly inside the Zari palace. Too quietly for an empire built on control and certainty. From her private observation chamber, the alien queen began to watch. Not openly, not as a ruler passing judgment, but as a silent presence hidden behind layers of light and glass. Below her, Eli moved through the inner research sector. He was given no weapons, no authority, only access. This itself was unusual. Humans were never allowed near Zari technology. Yet the queen had ordered it without explanation. At first, Eli explored carefully. He studied alien tools with curiosity, not hunger. He asked simple questions, listened more than he spoke. The scientists assigned to watch him expected sabotage, escape attempts, or fear. Instead, they saw patience. When a Zari engineer burned his hand during a reactor adjustment, Eli was the first to move. He tore a strip from his own sleeve, wrapped the injury with practiced care. "You should not touch me," the engineer hissed, confused. Eli only shrugged. "Pain feels the same everywhere," he said. From above, the Queen's fingers tightened against the crystal railing. That sentence echoed in her thoughts longer than it should have. Later, during a power fluctuation, alarms filled the sector. Energy surged through conduits. Several junior technicians froze in panic. Eli did not. He followed instructions quickly, moved where told, stabilized a failing node with steady hands. When it was over, no praise followed, no reward. Eli simply stepped back and waited. The Queen watched everything, every small choice, every moment where the human could have taken advantage, but did not. Her advisors noticed her absence from court sessions. "She observes too often," one whispered. "Observation leads to doubt," another warned. But the Queen ignored them. Each cycle, she returned to the chamber. Each cycle, the same question returned with her. Why did he care? Records showed humans were violent, emotional, selfish. Yet this one showed restraint where power would have helped him. One cycle, she decided to test him. A wounded Zari scout was brought into the sector. Injury severe, blood dark against pale armor. The Queen ordered the medical team to delay treatment, only slightly, just long enough to see what the human would do. Eli noticed immediately. He moved toward the scout. "Why is no one helping him?" he asked. The technicians avoided his eyes. "This is not your concern," one replied. Eli knelt beside the scout anyway. Checked breathing. Applied pressure where needed. "You will survive," Eli said quietly. "Just stay with me." The scout's eyes fluttered open, confused, afraid. "You are human," the scout whispered. "Yes," Eli answered. "But you are hurt." From the shadows above, the Queen felt something tighten in her chest, a feeling she had not allowed herself in many cycles. Hope. When the medical team finally intervened, the scout lived. The report reached the Queen within moments. That night, she summoned Eli to a private chamber. No guard stood inside, only soft light and long silence. Eli entered cautiously. He did not kneel, but he waited. "You disobeyed protocol," the Queen said, her voice controlled, unreadable. "I followed conscience," Eli replied. "If that is wrong, then punish me." The Queen studied him closely. "Humans are known for choosing emotion over logic," she said. "Why should this empire trust that?" Eli thought for a moment, then spoke carefully. "Because emotion is what makes us stop when we could keep destroying." The word struck deeper than she expected. She turned away, hiding her expression. Long ago, she had chosen logic. It had saved her empire, but it had cost her everything personal. "Leave," she said quietly. Eli hesitated, then added softly, "You watch more than you think." The Queen froze. "How would you know that?" she asked. Eli did not turn back. "Because someone who does not care would not be looking for reasons not to kill me." When the chamber doors closed, silence rushed in. The Queen remained standing, unmoving. For the first time since she took the throne, she questioned her own law, not as a ruler, but as a being capable of choice. Outside the chamber, unseen by all, members of the High Council had begun their own observations. They noticed the Queen's changed patterns, her delayed judgments, her private summons, and they did not like what they saw. As stars drifted slowly across the palace ceiling, the Queen returned to the observation chamber once more, watching the human who had done nothing but act with care, unaware that by simply being himself, he had placed both of them on a path where watching would soon turn into choice, and choice would turn into consequences that could shake the entire galaxy. The Queen told herself it was still observation. She repeated this thought each cycle, again and again, yet something had changed. She no longer watched only through hidden chambers. Now she arranged reasons to cross Eli's path. always formal, always controlled. When she entered the research sector, silence followed her. Zari scientists lowered their heads. Guards stood straighter. Eli did not kneel, but he stepped aside respectfully. His presence was calm, not careless. The Queen noticed small things she should not have noticed. How he learned alien routines quickly. How he spoke gently to nervous technicians. How he never raised his voice, even under pressure. These details unsettled her more than rebellion ever could. One cycle, she ordered Eli to assist in a cultural archive, a place where old records were kept. Wars, treaties, laws written in fire and blood. This is restricted. One advisor warned, humans should not see our past. The Queen's answer was simple. He will. Inside the archive, holographic memories filled the air. Scenes of conquest, planets burning, victories celebrated without grief. Eli watched quietly. He did not judge. He did not speak. Finally, the Queen asked, "What do you see?" Eli answered slowly, "I see survival, and I see a lot of loss." The Queen turned toward him sharply. "Loss is irrelevant," she said. "Survival is what matters." Eli met her gaze. "Survival without meaning is just delay," he replied. The words hung between them, heavy and dangerous. That night, the Queen could not rest. Her mind returned to memories she had buried, a younger version of herself, before the throne, before the law. Back then, she had believed in connection. It had ended in betrayal, in death, in a pain so deep she had carved law from it. Love was forbidden not because it was weak, but because it could destroy her control. The next cycle, unrest rippled through the palace. A border unit sent a warning signal. Unknown ships near Zari space. Humans were suspected. The High Council gathered quickly, voices sharp, fear hidden behind authority. "This proves it," one counselor said. "The human presence is already affecting stability." The Queen listened in silence. Her thoughts split between empire and individual. Eli was summoned for questioning. Guards surrounded him this time, hands near weapons. The Queen watched from the throne. Every answer Eli gave was honest. He denied knowledge of the ships. He showed no fear. One counselor leaned forward. "You are their signal," he accused. Eli shook his head. "If humans wanted war," he said, "you would not be having this meeting." Gasps filled the chamber. The Queen raised her hand before punishment could be ordered. "Enough," she said. "The investigation will continue without harm." After the session, she dismissed everyone else, leaving only herself and Eli in the vast hall. "You should have been careful," she said quietly. "They look for reasons to end you." Eli replied just as softly, "I know." "Then why do you speak so freely?" she asked. "Because lying would make me exactly what they fear," he said. The Queen stepped closer, closer than protocol allowed, closer than law permitted. For a moment, neither spoke. The air felt different, charged, unstable. "You are changing things," the Queen said. Her voice held no anger, only truth. "I am only being human," Eli replied. That was the moment she understood. The law could ban actions, punish behavior, control systems, but it could not kill a feeling once it took root. Elsewhere in the palace, unseen eyes watched this closeness. Council members exchanged silent looks. Decisions were forming without the Queen's consent. As Eli was escorted back to his quarters, he paused and turned slightly. "Your empire is strong," he said, "but strength does not have to be lonely." The Queen did not respond, but long after he was gone, his words remained. Above the throne hall, the ancient law still glowed, unchanged in form, but weaker in meaning, because the Queen now carried a feeling the law could not kill, and the empire was beginning to notice. The High Council no longer whispered. They watched. They counted cycles. They followed patterns the Queen did not realize she was leaving behind. Her shortened council meetings, her frequent presence near the research sector, her delayed decisions when the human was involved. To the council, this meant only one thing. The forbidden law was no longer untouched. Deep within the council chamber, ancient symbols glowed as a secret session was called. No guards were present. No servants allowed. "This has gone too far," one counselor said. The human lives when he should be dust. He walks freely. Another added, he speaks without fear. A third voice, cold and precise, delivered the truth they all feared. The queen protects him. Silence followed, heavy and dangerous. Protection was not mercy. Protection was attachment. At that moment, a hidden observer activated the palace surveillance web. Images streamed across the chamber walls. Moments carefully selected. The queen standing close to Eli. Private conversations. Her gaze lingering longer than command required. The truth was undeniable. She has broken her own law, a counselor whispered. And if the queen breaks law, the empire fractures. Orders were issued quietly. Eli would be tested one final time. If the queen intervened, the proof would be complete. That same cycle, an emergency alert echoed through the palace. A reactor conduit in the lower sector had destabilized. Failure would kill dozens. Eli was already nearby. He moved without hesitation, ignoring warnings, entering the hazard zone to stabilize the system. Radiation levels spiked. Zari technicians pulled back. No one ordered Eli to stop. From the throne chamber, the queen felt it, a sharp instinctive fear. Before reports even reached her, she rose from the throne. Council members called after her. My queen, protocol forbids. She did not stop. She arrived at the sector just as Eli collapsed to one knee. Energy burns visible across his arms. Get him out, she commanded, her voice no longer distant, no longer calm. Medical teams hesitated, then obeyed. The moment was brief, but it was enough. Council surveillance recorded everything. The urgency, the fear, the way the queen reached toward the human before catching herself. When Eli regained consciousness in the medical chamber, the queen was gone, but the air felt different. Guards now stood outside his room, not protective, restrictive. Meanwhile, the High Council moved fast. A formal accusation was prepared, not spoken aloud, but embedded into the Empire's legal network. Charge: violation of the first law. The queen was summoned, not as ruler, but as subject to the law she had written. She entered the council chamber alone, her posture steady, her face unreadable. Images filled the air once more, moments she could not deny. One counselor spoke. You allowed attachment. You endangered order. The queen answered calmly. I allowed survival. Another counselor stepped forward. Do not disguise weakness as philosophy. For the first time, her voice hardened. You call it weakness because you fear what you cannot control. The chamber erupted, voices overlapping, threats of removal, warnings of civil fracture. Finally, the verdict was spoken. The human would be executed publicly, to restore balance, to remind the empire that law was absolute. The queen felt the weight of that sentence settle into her core. She had faced wars without fear. But this was different. She was dismissed without ceremony. That night, she stood alone beneath the carved law above the throne, its words glowing as they always had, unmoved by time, unaware of the cost they demanded. Elsewhere, Eli was informed of his fate. He listened quietly. No anger, no panic. When a guard asked if he wished to speak to the queen one last time, Eli shook his head. She has already given me more than safety, he said. But the queen did not sleep. She walked the palace halls in silence. Every step a decision, every breath a breaking point. At dawn's cycle, she stopped, her reflection staring back from polished crystal walls. In that reflection, she no longer saw only a ruler. She saw a being standing between law and truth. And as the execution signal prepared to broadcast across the empire, the queen made a choice the council never expected. A choice that would not save order, but would redefine it. The execution signal spread across the Zari Empire like a cold shadow. Screens awakened in cities and warships. Citizens paused their work. Soldiers stood at attention. A human execution was not unusual, but this one carried a different weight, because it was ordered by the High Council, not announced by the Queen. In the lower holding chamber, Eli stood quietly, energy restraints locked around his wrists, his injuries still healing, his face calm despite the fate waiting for him. A guard avoided his eyes. You should be afraid, the guard muttered. Eli replied softly. Fear does not change what must be done. High above, the queen entered the throne hall alone. The ancient law glowed brighter than ever, as if sensing defiance. Council members waited for her, confident, certain she would submit. The lead counselor spoke. The execution will begin shortly. The queen walked past them, up the steps, toward the throne. My queen, another counselor warned. This can still end cleanly. She turned slowly, her eyes burning with a light none of them had seen before. There will be no execution, she said. Shock froze the chamber. You cannot stop it, the lead counselor replied. The law. I am the law, the queen said. Her voice echoed through stone and crystal. She seated herself on the throne, not in rest, but in declaration. Across the empire, screens shifted suddenly. The queen's image replaced the execution feed. Citizens gasped. Soldiers stared. No one spoke. For generations, the queen began. We have believed love to be weakness. We believed control was strength. Her gaze hardened, but that belief was born from fear. Council members shouted protests. Guards hesitated, unsure whom to obey. The queen raised her hand. Security systems across the palace locked instantly. Council access codes revoked. This human stands accused, she continued, of compassion, of restraint, of saving lives that were not his own. Images appeared behind her. Eli shielding wounded Zari soldiers. Eli stabilizing reactors. Eli refusing to flee when escape was possible. If this is weakness, the queen said, then our empire has misunderstood strength. The lead counselor stepped forward angrily. You would throw the empire into chaos for one human. The queen leaned forward. I would pull it out of decay, she replied. She stood from the throne and did something unthinkable. She touched the glowing law above the throne. Ancient symbols flickered, cracked. Gasps echoed across every broadcast. I wrote this law, she said, and today I break it. The execution order dissolved in the system. Eli's restraints unlocked instantly. In the holding chamber, guards stepped back in confusion. Eli looked down at his free hands, then up at the screen showing the queen. This is not mercy, her voice carried. This is correction. Council members shouted, called for arrest, for removal. But soldiers across the empire began to kneel, not to the law, but to the queen. They had seen the recordings. They had felt the truth behind her words. Security forces split, some standing with the council, many more standing with the throne. The queen's voice softened slightly. This human will live, and he will remain under my protection. She paused, then added the words that sealed everything. And any who challenge this choice challenge me. Silence followed, heavy and final. In the holding chamber, Eli whispered, What have you done? Back in the throne hall, the queen turned away from the shattered law. For the first time, she did not look back. The empire trembled, not from war, but from awakening, because the queen had not stepped down from the throne. She had redefined it, and as stars shifted beyond palace walls, both ruler and human understood one truth clearly. There was no return now. Only what came after the breaking of a law that was never meant to survive. The empire did not fall into chaos that cycle. It held its breath. Across Zari space, fleets paused mid-jump. Factories slowed. Councils waited. Citizens watched the stars as if they might speak. The queen stood before the shattered law, light flickering across broken symbols. For the first time, the throne hall felt larger than power. Eli was brought before her without chains, not as a prisoner, not as a symbol, but as a living choice. They stood facing one another in silence. No guards close, no council voices interrupting. You should not be here, Eli said softly. My life is not worth an empire. The queen replied without hesitation. An empire that survives by killing what is good is already dying. News spread fast. Some worlds celebrated. Others threatened separation. Old allies questioned loyalty. The High Council made its final move. A loyalist fleet activated hidden weapons, preparing to seize the throne by force. Warning alarms rang through the palace. Soldiers rushed to positions. The queen did not retreat. She broadcast one final message. not of command, but of truth. We feared love because we feared loss, she said. But fear built these wars, not compassion. Today, we choose another path. Eli stood beside her during the broadcast, visible to the entire galaxy. The Council fleet hesitated. Some ships powered down. Others turned away. A few fired. The battle was brief. Not because of superior weapons, but because soldiers refused to fight for a lie. When the last hostile signal faded, the stars seemed quieter. In the aftermath, the Queen stepped down from absolute rule. Not in weakness, but in strength. A new charter was written. Simple, clear. No species judged by fear. No love forbidden by law. Humans were no longer enemies. They became bridges, mediators, symbols of shared survival. Eli chose to remain, not as consort, not as ruler, but as himself. He and the Queen walked the palace gardens together, not always speaking, learning what peace felt like. Their bond was not declared with ceremony. It was shown through action, through patience, through trust earned slowly. Across the galaxy, historians would later say, the stars did not change course that day, but the way beings looked at them did. Love did not conquer the empire. It rewrote its meaning, and in time, the broken law above the throne was replaced with new words carved into crystal. Strength is the courage to care. Under that truth, the Zari Empire did not weaken. It endured, and far beyond palace walls, where old war routes once burned, new paths formed, not shaped by fear, but by a love that finally proved strong enough to survive the stars.